I want to go through my top 6 book recommendations for people interested in thinking about the future. And in particular, this is really about digital industries, how we disrupt the big tech monopolies, how will the future change. And I will say, I teach a course called Digital Industries. It's an upper level economics course, and most of these books are required reading for that course. But these are not at all textbook-like books. They're books that are super fun for anyone who is fascinated by the future like I am. The first book here is The Platform Revolution, and it really does a good job of laying out just the plain economics of online platforms, what they do, which is basically they match up two sides of a market, and sometimes those two sides are the same side. They curate, they basically operate like a little government running its own mini economy. So the book talks all about the different models for monetization of platforms, and it just lays out the economic foundations of the online economy. Now, the audience here does seem to be business people who are trying to understand the industry. So there is not a whole lot of critique of big tech monopolies. It's more like, if you're operating your business in this environment, how do you understand your business? But it's a really powerful book, and it's important for the basics. I should also say, of this list, this is probably a little bit more academic than some of the others. It's still a fast read, still very well written, but this is more just what are the foundations. The next book I recommend is Radical Markets. And this book is really good for creative thinking about economics. So it introduces some really cool concepts like quadratic voting and some other ways of restructuring the economy. And even though when you read some of these, you're going to be like, wait a second, I'm not sure that concept would actually hold up. It's still sort of like, okay, yeah, a lot of these concepts would need a whole bunch of extra work to make them work. And maybe they're only going to work in certain little environments. But this is really not about exactly how you organize the future. This is more about what kind of economic creativity do we need if we're going to make the future work. But they just kind of give you a sense for how different the future might be than the present, and how it might be structured in ways you hadn't even thought of before. The chapter Dismembering the Octopus in this book, I think, is one of the more important chapters ever written in economics. It's something everyone needs to understand. And that one is actually, I think, more just describing a phenomenon rather than giving a creative potential application. But this book is, I think, essential reading for anyone who wants to think about the future of Web 3.0 or the future of blockchain economics. Super important book. My next book recommendation is Who Owns the Future? And this book is really good at thinking about the siren servers, which is basically these big tech monopolies that have too much power. And he really thinks about the economics of what's going on there. He thinks carefully about the reasons why the internet is tending toward a winner-takes-all monopoly power economy. And he has a clear heartbeat on why that's a problem. Why we're not going to be in a good situation if we eliminate the middle class. And he gives the beginnings of some solutions to approaching that, things like data unions. He lays out both the problems and outlines some solutions in a way that I think is very approachable and really brilliant. So I highly recommend this one. My next recommendation is Blockchain Wars. And I think the subtitle is helpful: The Future of Big Tech Monopolies and the Blockchain Internet. So I've read a lot of blockchain books, and they tend to be either too jargony and too much in the weeds of how blockchain works, or they tend to be way too broad and general and not that helpful. This book actually does a really good job of explaining at the right level of detail what blockchain is, how it relates to siren servers, and basically connecting the blockchain future and the future of platform economics to the rest of these problems we're dealing with, and giving a basic vision for how some of this might play out. My next recommendation is Weapons of Math Destruction. And this one is really important to understand artificial intelligence and predictive statistics and the unintended consequences that can come about when we give the algorithms a certain goal. And maybe that's a fantastic goal, but because the algorithms don't understand the human side of things, there could be these injustice externalities. And she does a great job of giving really vivid examples of well-intended algorithms creating unintended consequences that really hurt a lot of people, and that honestly are going to basically create a situation where we are giving more opportunity to people who are already privileged. We keep people out of the system who are at a disadvantage, so that it's much harder to move up within any system as long as you have any trait that's correlated with people in poverty. I think it's a really important book. She has a TED Talk, you can watch that too. My next recommendation is The Inevitable. And this book is a really fast read, a really fun read, and well written. And it sort of lays out ways of thinking about intelligence and different types of intelligence, some of which might eventually be mainly done by machines as opposed to humans. It talks about dematerialization, how a smaller and smaller share of our economy is physical material things. It just sort of covers a broad range of trends that we have seen in the tech sector that will continue to transform the tech sector. This is things like more rental and less ownership and constant updating of different systems we interact with. He really has a heartbeat on some of these trends. And so I think this book really helps you think, how will slowly the future evolve? And I was really excited when I read this because it's a very hopeful book in the sense of giving you a vision that whatever is the most important part of the economy 20 years from now may come from a platform that does not yet exist. And we, as this generation, are going to be the ones to create that next thing in the economy. So that's so exciting. I really enjoyed this book. Now, I do have an honorable mention, which is The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. And this book is not super well written. It's like a little bit hard to get through and a little bit disorganized, which is why it didn't go on the main list of the 6 books. But I do think she has a really good framework in that book for understanding some of the forces going on in terms of extracting basically stuff from our brain. She kind of makes the analogy that we used to extract resources like iron and minerals from the earth. And now tech monopolies are extracting stuff from our brains, like our motivational keys, and they're extracting stuff from our brains in a way that is manipulative. And I think that's a very helpful framework for thinking about some of these issues. So if you want to think about the future, those are really the 6 books I recommend. Super exciting for people who want to figure out, how will things be different in 10 years and 20 years? And how can I be a part of envisioning that future and making it happen?